Hello, my name is Marilyn Rosenthal. I'm the director of AIPAC's Political Action Committee, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today for a conversation with a member of Congress who is a pro-Israel leader on issues affecting the U.S. Israel relationship, my friend, your friend, and AIPAC's friend, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So Congresswoman, thank you for being with us, and I just want to say to everyone watching that I'm going to be talking to her and talking to her by her first name because Debbie and I are good friends. And we want to make this just a great personal conversation to talk about the issues that we all care about. So Debbie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And yes, we are good friends. So I would be unhappy if you called me anything else but Deb.
Okay. I think, Debbie, most of the people watching today know a lot about you and your leadership in Congress on these issues, but I also know that there are people joining us today who know less about you. So maybe what I'd like to do is have you just talk a little bit about yourself and talk about what compelled you to not only run for Congress, but take a leadership role on the issues impacting the U.S. Israel relationship.
Well, first of all, I'm really thrilled to be able to join you, Marilyn, and the AIPAC family to talk about public service and also just the absolute necessity to make sure that there are pro-Israel members of Congress and that we ensure that Israel is not only remains a Jewish and democratic state, but that we help educate colleagues who may be less familiar with the necessity of that to embrace that notion and understand its purpose. And for me, to answer your question more directly, I was raised around my very Jewish family dinner table with the notion that it's important for us as Jews, when we are fortunate, that we should give back, that we should help make the world a better place. The idea of tikkun olam and repairing the world. And I guess I really made tikkun olam a career choice. It's kind of what I always only half jokingly say. So in taking that value seriously, I ran for the Florida legislature and served there for 12 years and eventually had an opportunity to run for Congress in the chance to succeed my predecessor, who was Peter Deutsch, who I know many people watching remember. And so when he let me know that he was running for the United States Senate and urged me to run for his seat in Congress, it was really about making sure that we had the continuity of values. And by that, I mean, I was actually unaware, but then became aware during my first campaign for Congress that if elected, I would be Florida's first Jewish congresswoman, the first woman, Jewish woman to be elected to Congress from Florida. And so that was just a tremendous responsibility. I make policy through a distinctly Jewish lens, and having an opportunity to be a strong voice for Israel was certainly a huge responsibility and something that I was prepared to take seriously. And then more broadly, Florida is the gateway to Latin America. And so making sure that we had a voice that was going to understand that between Israel and Latin American politics, in South Florida, foreign policy is domestic policy. And so really it was sort of a mishmash of reasons that brought me to Congress.
Well, I can say for people here listening that we're certainly happy that you ran and that you are continuing to do this really important work. Speaking of that important work, I want to talk about trips to Israel that are sponsored by AIPAC's charitable foundation, the American Israel Education Foundation. And you and I had the opportunity to spend time in Israel in 2019, which for me actually was the last time I was in Israel because of COVID. So I personally look forward to going back and hope to have that opportunity sometime soon. But I know you've been to Israel several times. And that we had the opportunity to be with cumulatively 7 members, female members of Congress. You were the senior member on that trip. And then most recently, you were in Israel in February with some freshman Democratic members of Congress, with Steny Hoyer and Hakeem Jeffries and several others. Tell us why you thought it was important to do that trip back a few years ago with women leaders in Congress. And secondly, talk about some of the new and different impressions that you had on this most recent trip.
Well, I'm really, it's with great emotion that I talk about those trips and just, the relationship and connection that I feel I've been able to develop with the Jewish people's connection, our people's connection to Israel. I first went to Israel when I was 25 years old, and that was a remarkable experience in my life, having been raised as a secular Jewish woman and someone who continues to be so secular, but who really benefited from the enhanced understanding of why Israel is so important to the Jewish people. But what was key about leading a women members trip was, first, it was the first ever delegation of women members of Congress to Israel that AIEF sponsored, and it was a bipartisan group. It included Democrats, a Republican, appropriators, freshmen, Congressional Black Caucus members, and an LGBTQ member as well. And our families accompanied us. And so, because so many of them had never been to Israel before, always you're being able to lead a trip where there are people who have not had the experience of traveling to Israel is remarkable always. But being able to have what we asked for, and AIEF was really fantastic about building, was not to just have a typical agenda. We wanted to make sure that what members of Congress are normally taken to see was done through the lens of women. And because all of us were also mothers, it allowed us to examine the complex problems that Israel faces through a uniquely woman's lens. And it was important for my colleagues to see Israel firsthand, as I had had a chance to do, because no matter how much you study a map or read a textbook, when you're on the ground, hearing from people firsthand makes a world of difference. And because we also had a diverse range of philosophical approaches to policy, when you are able to have the collegiality of women and hear from Israeli women and Palestinian women, and we went to the Druze community as well. It's a chance to really connect differently in terms of style, in terms of similar and common experience, and sometimes often ears open more widely when you are hearing stories and experiencing things together with women, and also talking with women.
So, I want to share with our audience an experience that I experienced with you on that trip, among many, which was, the fact that you are on the Appropriations Committee and understand, budgets and the use of taxpayers' money and so on and so forth. I just remember the conversation that we had with Saeb Erekat, who was then a leader in the Palestinian Authority, on the issue of pay to slay. And I just want to share with our audiences the incredible work that Congresswoman Schultz did in front of other members of Congress who knew a little bit less about these issues, and her tenacity at going toe-to-toe with Erekat on this issue and really pushing back on this really heinous practice of compensating the families of terrorists who commit atrocities. And I just for people watching, it was really very important for someone who was on the Appropriations Committee, who understands these issues to really go toe-to-toe and make it clear that American policy and American policymakers simply don't agree with this and are active on legislation to combat it. So I just want to take that moment to thank you for going toe-to-toe in a very, what I would say was an uncomfortable exchange, but a necessary one. And so I just want to say, when you're in a difficult situation, you want Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz on your side.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Do you mind if I say something about that?
No, please. Please do.
The number of times that I had been in discussions in Israel and in the U.S. about pay to slay what was lengthy. Having been, I didn't go into that conversation really planning or expecting for it to be as intense as it was. But his answers were really unacceptable. And I mean, I just could not let him slide without driving home how opposed we were to continuing to provide funding when they literally had a line item in their budget to pay families of terrorists. And he referred, they call them martyr payments, whatever you label them. They're absolutely unacceptable. They incentivize more terrorist acts. And I was absolutely not willing to let him off the hook without answering me, why do you include these payments in your budget? And eventually, because I was making him give me an answer, and I wanted to do that in front of my diverse group of colleagues philosophically, so they would hear with their own ears from the Palestinian leadership's mouth what the excuses they were making. And he sort of charged it off to, well, we look at them as social service funding. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, you had to pick chins off the table from my colleagues who finally heard the excuses that they made for essentially incentivizing murder of Israelis.
And I think it was a very defining moment on that trip, and sort of an aha moment throughout the trip for the members. So fast forward to this last February trip. Talk about what you thought was a little, what you saw differently and new for you and impactful.
So this trip I was a participant in, and frankly less stressful as a result. But it was a chance to go with, there were some veteran members, there were a number of new freshman members, and we'd had members that had been to Israel many times and some who'd never been. Of course, while we were there, we did a lot of things, from the north to the south, always seeing. It was actually my first time because the other times that I had been to Israel, the opportunity to see an Iron Dome battery, had been canceled for whatever reason, for one reason or another. So it was my first time actually seeing an Iron Dome battery and having a chance to talk to the kids. And because these kids were younger than my own kids, and I have young adult children, 18, and my twins are 23, to look at these kids and see their patriotism and their devotion to being able to defend not just Israel, but all people who live in Israel was really remarkable. And you could see just how close we were to Sderot, how dangerous it is to live in Israel. So that was, I think, talking to those kids and seeing the proximity of how close rocket fire is coming to hurt real people. That was impactful the bottom line is, it comes down to some of these things you have to see. You can't just be told. I mean, yes. It's just a remarkable difference. And then the other, I think, most impactful part about that trip is that we toured a Hezbollah terror tunnel from Lebanon to Israel that was found by the IDF, partially as a result of technology funded by the United States government. And I mean, I think the most searing thing about that, Marilyn, was that it we learned that Hezbollah spent 10 years
Mm-hmm.
building that tunnel. And its sole purpose was to kill Israelis. You know, where it came out was very close to the nearest town, and put them right in the wheelhouse of being able to kill people. That's the life that Israelis live every single day. I mean, when you live in a country where you don't know whether you could get blown up in a coffee shop or shot by Palestinian terrorists who are devoted through their lives. I mean, a decade. Imagine a decade when that they were willing to spend to build that tunnel, and it it takes your breath away that their time horizon really is so much longer than the moment to moment that most people live. And it also makes you a little despondent about the opportunities to make peace. But there is hope. We left that trip with hope and optimism, and I trust that we're going to talk about the Abraham Accords. But that was just it was so chilling, not just seeing the tunnel, but knowing how long they were willing to spend to build it, and that they're just relentless. And that means we have to remain relentless and vigilant.
Thank you for that. I do want to shift to the policy on a couple of different fronts. So the first is that as a senior member of the Appropriations Committee, you're at the forefront of ensuring that Israel gets its full security assistance. And you work closely with many other members of the Appropriations Committee who are as supportive as you are. But you are also countering challenges within the committee and beyond the committee, given that some individuals in Congress want to place conditions on that aid and push back on the security assistance. So peel the curtain a little bit, take us behind it, and let us know a little bit of what do those conversations look like with people who think differently than you do about these issues. And what are some of the arguments that you use with people who know a little bit less about them, who are not particularly hostile to it, but what are persuasive arguments that you use to ensure that people are coming together on Israel security assistance?
So the way I want to answer this is twofold. First and foremost, at the end of the day, we just have to get it done. I mean, it is absolutely essential that we provide our foreign aid assistance, foreign aid funding to Israel, both for the United States national security interests and also because of our value system, in which we believe that Israel, and we support Israel remaining a Jewish and democratic state. So I say that to say that it is very important to continue to educate members of Congress about how critical it is to provide that funding. But it's just as important to just get it done. So a lot of, in my work as an appropriator, a lot of the work is done very behind the scenes, in writing language, in negotiating with other colleagues and our staff, negotiating on what we will and will not support. And so there's it's a constant discussion and dialogue, both face to face and behind the scenes, and sometimes saying, look, if this language isn't written this way, then you don't have my vote. And when that matters, as the numbers being close right now do, it gives us important leverage. So that's the more crass and direct way of describing how we get things done, because they're just necessary. But then, in reality, we have very few, thankfully, in single digits, members that are less supportive or not supportive or even opposed to the assistance that we provide, either defensively or in terms of the total foreign aid package. And so we don't have all that much to work to do, but AIPAC's work in educating candidates for Congress about the importance of supporting Israel is really important, because I always stress to people, we're less than 2% of the population as Jews. And as a result, Israel is not an issue that most members ever think about before coming to Congress. And so establishing those relationships, making sure that there's not a long conversation that has to be had with someone like me. I represent a large pro-Israel Jewish community. I'm Jewish. You had me at hello. But when you have members who, I think the number is at about 40% of Americans have never met a Jewish person or don't spend time with someone Jewish. And so they are starting at the beginning of understanding why that support for Israel is so important. So having those conversations and sometimes in the moment as we are preparing and having to shift gears because there are opponents that are trying to undermine our ability to get this done. And then you have to play the long game where you want to build personal relationships so that you can sit down with someone who may not think like you and help them understand and have those conversations. Building trust relationships in the legislative process is critical because if you can't even start a conversation with someone because you don't have that trust, then you're going to be hard pressed to achieve consensus.
And thank you for that, because as you and I know, the conversation about security assistance just doesn't happen in the confines of the particular process on the bill. It's a conversation that takes place throughout based on events that occur in Israel or in the United States, and it's a constant education process, and so thank you for that. So let's get to the Abraham Accords, because these were nothing short of a game changer in the region for Israel, and I think that these normalization agreements really span from an open embracement of the Jewish state to economic relationships that really know no bounds. And so from your perch in Congress, talk a little bit about what Congress can continue to be doing to make sure that these accords continue to flourish, and that beyond some of the Gulf states that are already part of this relationship, which is important and big news, there's always more work to be done in this arena. So talk about that role that Congress and you in particular might want to play there.
So there being this new era of Israeli-Arab relations really gives us a unique opportunity to expand peace, progress, and prosperity. And, having been in Israel in February and seen this firsthand, it was remarkable. We had a dinner, I think it was dinner, with the ambassadors from Bahrain, Morocco, and the UAE with us in Israel. And they came together for the first time, and their excitement was so remarkable. They had so many economic partnerships and all the things that they were describing to us that were being shared. So the opportunity to build on that now is critical. And so Brad Schneider's Israel Relations Normalization Act was really important because now our State Department is really required to develop a strategy on how we can build and strengthen those accords. So look, at the end of the day, the Palestinians are going to do what they're going to do. Their leadership is, for lack of a better term, is dysfunctional. Unfortunately, that dysfunction is deadly. But so we have to work around them, and it's actually so heartwarming that the Arab nations that are moving in this direction are ready to do that, and appear to be exhausted with the Palestinians and their intransigence.
So Debbie, I just want to conclude with a couple of things. So first of all, I know that these conversations will continue, and that we know that there's also, we've seen high congressional turnover over the last, half a dozen years, and more is coming. So we look forward to your role in mentoring new members of Congress, particularly in your own party, coming in on these issues. So I just want to thank you in advance for that. And as the PAC director for AIPAC, I just want to be able to say that it was our pleasure.
Very proud of you, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you. But it was really our pleasure to support you and to send a signal in our own name to recognize your pro-Israel leadership. So I just want to thank you.
Well, I want to thank you because I have to tell you when my AIPAC key contact reached out to me to tell me about the support very early. It was incredibly meaningful to me personally. I mean, to have that, to be able to include that in that AIPAC has endorsed me and is supportive of my work. It sends a message to my constituents, but it undergirds my efforts to be able to continue to move forward and stand up for what we believe in. I mean, it's just so important, and it's important that AIPAC engage more directly as you have. So I was glad to see that.
Well, thank you very much. I think you're getting called for some House votes. So,
Sorry
we're going to let you go.
about that.
No, it's fine. So we're going to let you go. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, and I want to thank everyone here for joining us for this conversation, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.